So then we are back with the more understandings from the time of the Second Tabernacle services, where we find the Aramaic English translation of the word. This translation comes from the original manuscripts of the prophets of the Israelic lineage. So then we can understand the time of the end. As per Yeshayahu the prophet, we find layers of understanding of the spring feast, the autumn feast, and also the returning of the cities of the Mashiach laid waste for many centuries. As we read it in Yeshayahu the prophet, we find then layers of understanding of the spring feast, the autumn feast, and also these are related with the time of Yeshayahu and the time of Daniel and Revelation, and previously was explained then sections of the failure of the U.S. government of organizing the Western system because of various situations, and obviously there is the lavished lifestyle of politicians. They are truly a bad example, and let's then hope next year then a new wave of responsibility then is broadcasted in our government, and make sure they don't spend so much, because truly those who have worked for the U.S. government, the amount of waste is simply enormous. And even if they believe some sort of a divine truly did not show during these 8 years a certain amount of restraint in our expenses. So there are understandings that shows many kinds of expenses they should not be there. But because of the lack of fiscal responsibility, then we find that the economy of our country is ruined. And China is obviously leading the system from the east, and there is very important information that China is establishing a new momentum, and there is a very important article posted on the BRICS Post, a very important British online newspaper, and then it states China believes we should then set a new and very practical working plan and positively respond to the expectations of industry and sustain momentum and establish a direct trade area in Asia Pacific at an early date. And then by pushing for a wider deal in Asia Pacific that would equal the EU, China also obviously have taken leadership of these forward motion, and it shows some of the dangers of the market from next year onwards. As it was said many times before, the Chinese system is coming, there is a system coming, and sure enough, the system came. Now we find that they are launching their own equipment in space. So then, the truth of the situation is, as the future comes, it's becoming more evident the weakening of the West and the strengthening of the East. But the Holy Instructions are giving us also a few glimpses of the re-strengthening of the system later in the future. Now comes the inventory of these last 8 years and finding sections of abuse in our government, and then taking at least the 4 next years, but simply organizing and leaning the government and then with a re-election, then after 40 years, then should be able to recuperate some of the damage caused. So then, not pushing blame in any person, but then the numbers are showing some very substantial failure, and the very character of the government was not very responsible. So there is a big shame as this government then ends and then a new government takes place. Not every situation was the fault of this government, obviously. There were debts that were pending from many years ago. But then the inventory wasn't taken for a long time. The government has spent so much, there are no control or no controls over the expenditures. We know that the explosion on the Pentagon was to cover for the vast amount of money they lost and they could not count for. So there are some very disturbing problems that this government should deal with. And one of them is placing under the control our economy. Now then, computers are very advanced. Now previously, before the computer age, they had more control and more responsibility during these times of computers. It's kind of strange. The technology has gone up and then the values and character of the people have gone down. So it's absolutely unimaginable. A vice president of this country going to France and spending $500,000 a night. It is truly unbelievable the amount of resources these people are so lavishly spending without any regard for the taxpayers. Are they saying that France could not provide a basic security from their own armed forces? And then you had to go in one of the best hotels in the area and spending lavishly while so many Americans are going through rough times. Now these people did not even have the slightest responsibility before the divine, even though if they participate in some sort of a church, they should not go there because the divine cannot reflect through them. So then China is establishing a new parameter, and since they are part of the BRICS, then India is making also deals with Japan, and then obviously is a short while until they are in line with China, because the whole Eastern system must be lined up as one. This is what the whole instructions are giving us. Then the kingdom of the East is not only talking about an area of absolutely total control, but during Daniel's time he was speaking primarily of a system coming from a certain area of the world. So then the kingdom of the North was hired by China to take care of the military aspects when they launched their final system. So there are many huge problems that we should deal with, and we should not be hopeful of bringing the factories back to the United States. It's not truly wise thinking that the economy of this country is going to be based upon industry. It no longer. China has the absolute control of the industry of the world. But there is a point of the rare materials yet, and this is directly related with the organizing of Africa. It is a must. This country has absolutely no choice whatsoever. Rather than diverting the resources in the Middle East and fighting a war that we simply cannot win, and then diverting some of these resources and having diplomacy, and then substituting some of the armed forces of the United States with other countries so they can bear the burden of these expenses, since the armed forces are only a burden to this country. Not talking in a bad way, talking in a positive way. No person in the military wants to put their lives on the line. War is not a joyful situation. It is objective. They have to go there and take care of it and then be gone. So then other nations can take on the responsibilities and the dangers, so then this nation can relieve itself from its huge burden and then divert some of these resources and then give it into Africa, investing in Africa. And then as we do so, then they use our money as a means of exchange, international exchange, so then we can get our percentages in each time they spend USD. Certain situations are very obvious. You don't have to have a university diploma or own a company, but some basic understandings of the directives the divine is given through his original instructions. So the next year is a very important time, a big transition, and the expenses must be put under the control. They must hire responsible people. Lots of policies of giving certain amount and must be spent until certain time of the year must be gone. It's unimaginable replacing regular chairs with the CEO chairs during the time where the country is absolutely in a big crisis and not treated as a crime. So they became legalized pirates. But there are sections yet that must be worked on, and in a lot of cases it shows that from far away glance the Republicans are more responsible with expenditure than the Democrats. No person should be judgmental regarding these choices of Republicans or Democrats, but they are showing more responsibility with maintenance than the Democrats. Democrats, they have a policy of spending, and it's important, but they go beyond what they should have. That's when then it's no longer becomes responsibility, then it's becoming a crime. And they're having fun with it while the system is being ruined. So then let's be hopeful next year some of these situations can be then placed under the control, and then people can start recounting these huge amounts that this country is spending. Because the policy of this country was never neglecting, but it was never meant for abuse. So let's be grateful that a tradesperson has taken on the most important responsibility of this country, and then showing very important management examples, so then people can be inspired, people, they can pay their taxes being responsible, and then organizing and placing on paper this huge amount of expenses. And the printing money machine is probably working day and night. And more than likely it's going to be working for quite some time, until we start helping Africa organizing its own economy. And then starting with the Congo, and then the Congolese people, giving them some hope of some control, fighting against the warlords. It won't be easy, a very hard path. But this objective is going to bring the recuperation of our economy. That's what the Holy Instructions are showing very clearly. There is a reason why Beit Yashurum, or then Sheba, had a relationship with Solomon or Yajija. It's already showing these names. Those are from Arab descent, because they were very prominent in the land. So the time of spiritual isolation is simply gone. But then Africa is extremely important for the economy of this country. As Congo is organized and used as a means of exchange, our money, so then the favor we give them to organize their country is then paid back by using our USD as a means of exchange. Then the other country, for instance Rwanda, considers the same situation, though Rwanda is in a much more organized state than Congo. And then the African nations start copying from Congo. And then next thing we know, then our economy starts recuperating. And rare materials must be used in every nation. So then, next year, let's be hopeful that the country will be able to organize it and then control our expenses. At least a great portion of it should be. Next time we're going to evaluate more of these from the enlightenment of the Hamashiach ben Yosef and what he said regarding the time of the restoration period. So please stay tuned, much more coming up.